All right, everybody. So I'm seeing a lot of common questions asked over and over again on the C6 groups. I'm sure this happens in any group that has a specific model or make. So what I'm gonna do is make a video going over some of the most common questions, and maybe we can put them in one place and everybody can just know the answers. So check it out. All right, so one of the most common questions we see is, what's the best oil to put in my car? Well, here's how you can tell. Get in your owner's manual and look. There will be a specific spec listed for your vehicle, minimum spec, and then you get on the back of the oil bottle and check it out. If you go to the back of your oil bottle and look, there will be an API service number or rating. Match that up with what's in your owner's manual. All oil will have these. And make sure that the spec that is on the oil is at least what is called for in the manual of your vehicle. Now, if you have a modified engine, supercharged, turbocharged, running nitrous, stroker motor, built, aftermarket, whatever, you need to talk with your builder and then think about how you're going to use the car. Are you going to drive the car on the street every day where you have normal temperatures? Are you going to be out on the track drifting or whatever, high RPM, crazy high temperatures? Do you need a bunch of extra wear additives? Is the car going to be a garage queen sitting there being stored and you need additives to keep it from corroding in the motor? That's the things you need to ask about. Don't just ask somebody on the forum or in the group on Facebook, because everybody's just going to answer with whatever oil they put in their car. And you may not be doing the same thing. Something else I see pretty often is people have this electrical issue that happened, then it went away, and then it came back, and inevitably I see somebody post, "Oh, did you check your fuses?" Well, here's the deal, folks. Fuses are one-time use. They're like a hand grenade. They pop one time. They don't fix themselves. So if you're gonna ask about electrical issues, at least for bare minimum, learn how to use a test light or a meter and understand that a fuse is one time. A circuit breaker can be reset. They can be manual or automatic. A fuse, one time, hand grenade. Pops one time, done. Throw it away, done. There's all different kinds of fuses. You got big old maxi fuses. You got these OEM fuses. These come out of the Honda. You got the old style, I think it's ATC or something like that. You got the more modern mini fuses. But if you look in these, you look through there, those are connected. When those pop, they are done. They do not heal themselves. So learn how to use a test light. You hook this to the ground. You touch this to the circuit. If it lights up, this one in particular lights up red if it's got power. You can then hook it up backwards and it will check for ground if you want. A meter. I've had this meter since I was in, my gosh, my 20s. That thing's 20 something years old. Has two leads that hook in depending on what you want. If you're looking for voltage, you put it to voltage DC. You hook your two leads to voltage and common. When you touch it, if it has voltage, it'll let you know what the voltage is. Learn how to use a meter. It's not a fuse if it fixed itself. Another one of my favorites is the, has anyone ever, and then insert any kind of anything ever done to a vehicle? The answer, yeah, somebody's probably already done it. And going along with the, has anybody else ever, the should I install? We don't care if you're putting those AutoZone stick-on fender vents. It's your car, do it. I don't care. If it makes you happy, do it. We're gonna clown you regardless, no matter what you do to it. If you do a good job, you'll get props. If you don't, we'll make fun of you anyway. So do whatever makes you happy. We don't care. What's it worth? Who knows? As much as you can get someone to pay that you will accept to sign over the title. That's what it's worth. Start high, you can always come down. People want to say, well, mine's got this, trying to make it a one of one. There's a great story on VinWiki about the weird Corvette selling people and how everybody wants to break their car down till it's a one of none vehicle, and how special it is because they owned it or because it has some bizarre combination of green on orange interior. Just ask what you think it's worth, and if it sells in 20 minutes, you were too cheap. If it takes you 2 weeks, lower your price and see if it sells then. Don't ask us, we don't know. Unless we're buying it, it doesn't matter. The only person that matters to what it's worth is the person writing the check, buying it from you, and you signing over the title. So start somewhere. There's all kinds of online resources, Kelley Blue Book, Car Gurus, anything. Do some research, find cars similar to yours and price them in market and go from there. So a lot of these questions are asked on the C6 Facebook groups over and over again. They get the same answers over and over again, yet people still ask the same question over and over again, I guess because they don't realize that even Facebook has a search function. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my little old 2009 Poverty Vet here to show you some of the most common questions and the answers to them. So I'm starting to see a lot of people that don't know that if your vehicle battery is dead, if your remote battery is dead, or if you accidentally somehow lock your fob into your C6 Corvette, there is a manual way to get into the car. So I'm gonna show you how to do that here. So you come to the back of your car, and yes, I covered my plate because everybody says, oh, you have to cover your plate, even though I personally don't care. But you come to the back of your car, and hopefully when you bought your car, you got a key. This one happens to have been a copy, because if you see it says Saturn. You come to the very back, and under here, there is a keyhole. Turn that. And let's hope that you have your key fob nearby and it doesn't have a dead battery, because it will set off the alarm, and you're in. Then from there is a release over here in the corner. You can pull that. It will release your door manually, which hopefully it will pop open, and you're in. If you had a dead car battery, then of course you would raise the hood. Hook up your booster cables to your battery, get some power to the car, fire it up, and carry on. Something else I see on the C6 pages is, hey, I'm gonna put the 160-degree thermostat in my car so that it'll run cooler. Here's the thing, the thermostat only opens sooner at 160 degrees. It does not make the car run at 160 degrees. The radiator and fan is what makes the maximum amount of cooling for that car. So if your car runs 210 degrees on a 90-degree day, and you put with a 180-degree thermostat, and you put a 160-degree thermostat, guess what? Still gonna run 210 degrees on a 90-degree day, because the max cooling is dependent upon the size of that radiator, that fan, and the amount of airflow that comes through it. Now, if you're going to try and diagnose a cooling problem, you need to check down here. There is a connector that goes down to the fans, and I have mine actually deleted. I'll have to put some pictures up of that. But I deleted the connector because they tend to get hot. The connector itself gets corrosion, starts to get high resistance. The connector gets hot, it melts, then eventually it loses connection altogether. The fan quits, and then one day when it's super hot out and you got your AC on, all of a sudden you get the hot engine, AC off, 230 degrees on the temp gauge that you didn't notice, and all of a sudden your car's sitting there puking water everywhere. So take a look at the fitting, or the connector. It's down here in this general area. These wires right here, I've got them taped up again. I did mine with heat shrink and butt connectors. I just made mine hardwired, because down at the very bottom, you'll kind of see down there, there's a little box, that little silver box down there. Looks like it's got some fins on it. Has a connector on it. So if you ever need to unplug that, you can just disconnect it farther down. You don't need that plug up top. Another common one I see on the C6 pages is I got a service charging system warning. What do I do? Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is get over here on the side, and if your car has headers, it'll make it a little easier. And you need to look at those connections right there on the starter, those shiny silver ones. You'll see that my starter has already been replaced because I had this issue. I'll see if I can post a picture of what it looks like. But that top stud breaks loose, and it is part of the charging circuit to the battery. It causes the car to do all kinds of weird stuff, and then eventually, altogether, one day the car just will not start, and you're sitting there screaming, my car won't start, what's going on? If you have factory manifolds with factory catalytic converters, you will not be able to see that, and you will have to get from underneath the car to go up there and check it. It's an opportune time to put a set of headers on your car, just so you know, but check that first. Also, if you haven't done the big three on your C6 Corvette, which is changing the ground from here to the cylinder head to a heavier gauge wire, adding a heavier gauge wire from the charging lug over to the fuse box, and then upgrading the ground to the battery to the frame, you're doing yourself a disservice. I did this on my car. These cars are already a little bit on the verge of not having enough charging capacity. And by doing that, I picked up 0.2 of a volt on average, which in a 12-volt technical system is a pretty good increase for doing nothing but adding a couple wires. So going back to having fob issues, Let's just say you get in your car one day and go with this number, and you get in and you hit your button, and let's just say that it does this and says no fob detected, won't let you start the car. So what you need to do is take your fob in your glove box. There is a hole right here. Let's see if I can hold this with one hand. You can put your fob in the hole like that, and it will recognize the fob and allow you to start the car. Now, I said, okay, I got in. My fob works, and I can't get my shifter out of park. Well, first of all, why do you have a Corvette with an automatic transmission? That is totally crazy to me. Anyway, if you do, you'll get in your car and you'll pull the little trigger on the front and you're trying to get it out of park. You got your foot on the brake, you got power to the car, and it won't work. Two things. One, the little solenoid that locks the shifter in those cars can get gummed up, especially if you're the kind of person who carries coffee or sodas or something in their cup holder. It gets down in there, it gums those things up. The other thing is the solenoid itself can just fail. Third thing, you can have a bad brake light switch. So check your brake lights, make sure those work. Also, once you get that to where that works, you should hear it click. There is a thing you can find online to show you how to cut the little stop where it just always is off, doesn't ever lock up anything, but then somebody can get in the car, pull it out of park without having to have a key. For you automatic guys and gals, there is also a connector on the shifter itself that goes from the shifter mechanism back to the transmission. Evidently those are little nylon pieces. They get old and crack and break, and one day you'll just go to put it in out of park or put it in gear and your shifter won't have any connection to the transmission. Evidently it's a pretty cheap little piece and easy to change as long as you can get underneath the car. So for you automatic guys and gals, check those out, make sure they're fresh. So I see some that say can't service my traction control off or active handling. So in this particular car, you do traction system off, you hit it again, competitive driving mode. The trick is that you have to have, let's see if it'll clear, you have to be able to get to tire pressure. Now, I do not have active tire pressure monitoring sensors, so my tire pressures have defaulted to the XX. If your tire pressure system says 0, in those areas, you will not be able to access competitive driving mode. I think you can still do traction control off, but it will not let you have comp mode. If you'll drive that vehicle takes several days, typically, at least has for me, for them to finally default and quit looking for those tire pressure sensors, you'll get XX on both of those. You will always have a TPMS light shining in your face, which sucks, but you can then switch tires and wheels to wheels that don't have tire pressure sensors like drag radials or a second set of wheels or whatever, and still have your competitive driving mode. So you can see I'm at 0, I have traction system off, I have competitive driving mode, I can go back to regular, have all those options. So again, if you have 0 reading, so it's reading a 0 pressure, you will not have comp mode, but if you'll wait long enough, eventually they'll default and quit looking and have XX. There are people that say that you can take tire pressure monitor the sensors and put them into like a piece of PVC pipe. You air up the pipe to 35 pounds and then the sensors will always read that. I have not tried that myself. Other people say that if you don't move the sensors on a regular basis to where they sense move it, they'll go to sleep. I would think get them out and shake them every once in a while, or let them roll around in one of your cubby holes may be enough. Have not tried that. So if anybody knows the answer to that for sure as to whether the sensors go to sleep if they're not moving, that'd be great to know. So there's all kinds of people out there with videos showing how to fix all these common problems, but like the wobbly mirror, where you can take some cheap drill bits and cut them up, the squeaky top. These cars are squeaky as all get out, especially in the summertime. Mine's terrible, but there's all kinds of online resources that'll show you where to fix, what to lube in these areas. And back here in the back, okay, we've seen the door pads. These cars have electronic door latches in the quarter panels. These pads are little buttons on the back that release those panels. There are times you'll come up to the car, even with a good key fob and power to the car, you'll hit that switch and they won't open. What happens is the connections inside of these pads get wet, corroded, or whatever. If you take these two screws out, pull this off, there's a little connector on the backside, take that out, flip it over, you'll disassemble it. I think it's a little bitty baby Torx screws. Take a Q-tip and some alcohol. You'll clean the connections very gently on the backside. You'll see that they're kind of dirty and corroded. Put it all back together, put it back on. Your door pads or your release pads will work a whole lot better. If you do that and they continue to not work, then you probably ought to just replace them. These are pretty cheap. They're, I think, $20 or so per side if you don't get painted ones. Now, if you clean that and you're hitting that and you're hearing that the car is trying to open it, which I don't know if you can hear it on camera, but there's a clicking sound in the car. If that's happening, then your door latch itself could have gone bad. Mine did. This latch, again, not very hard to replace. You do have to take your interior panel out, slide your seat out of the way. There's a couple bolts to take that out on the inside. There's the emergency cable that goes to the back. There's a couple connectors and wires, the emergency release on the floor. These are, I think, about $200. They'll take you 30 to 45 minutes if you're reasonably mechanically inclined and have the tools. Just keep in mind, GM likes to use a lot of Torx, so invest in those if you don't already. Talking about the manual releases, a lot of people don't realize Corvettes have manual releases in the floor. Should you have a dead battery situation or a crash and the door pads are disabled, you can be in the car, pull that latch, and that will release the door manually. It's the fail-safe, as long as the cable is connected to this latch assembly here. All right, so this part only applies to those of us with the manual transmission cars. So all you automatic owners, you can skip this part. This is what's the best clutch for me to buy? Well, again, it kind of goes back to the oil, how you're gonna use the car. The best clutch, the best tires, the best any part, depends on how you're gonna use the car. So for me, I have a stroked LS3, high compression. I plan to take it to the drag strip at times. I'm gonna drive aggressively. Personally, I wound up with a Tilton ST246. I had issues with the hydraulics. So I actually have, down in there, I have the Tick master cylinder. I have the Tilton slave cylinder inside. For me, that was the clutch that I felt was the proper usage for myself. I drive it on the street, but at the same time, I wanna have grip for when I go to the track. I do run drag radials at times, but there's other people, if you're just gonna drive the car, just put a stock clutch in it. Put an LS7 clutch in it. If you're gonna be doing road racing, you may want something with a lighter mass so that it'll shift quicker. Asking a general question of what is the best of anything, but especially a clutch, it depends on how you're gonna use the car. You'll see people talk about having poor clutch performance, and this is actually about time for me to do, so we'll take a look here. So that fluid should be just about as clear as you can get. It's a little dirty down there in the bottom, you can kind of see. So you'll may have heard of the Ranger method, which is a system, some guy on a forum, his username was Ranger, evidently came up with a way to keep the clutch system working well on these cars. And it basically consists of routinely draining and flushing the clutch fluid. The bleeder on these cars is very difficult to get to if you have a stock one. So I highly recommend that if you're gonna ever do a clutch, to put a aftermarket bleeder in there. Mine is tucked away right somewhere. Anyway, I got it tucked away in there. But I found that if you just take a couple paper towels, put in there, gently put them in, it'll soak up all the fluid, get it out of there, put it into a bowl. Do not drip it on your paint. Brake fluid can't eat paint. Take that out, and then you'll take the paper towel and kind of wipe the bottom. Do not touch the pedal or anything in between, and then refill this. It does a pretty good job of keeping it fresh. Now, if you have the time, it is best to actually flush the fluid all the way through. That way it cleans the line between the master cylinder and the slave, and you get a full fresh fluid in there instead of just making it fresher. Coming back around to some of the common questions, people say, what's the widest wheel or the biggest tire, or will these wheels fit? Well, first of all, for you, those of us that have narrow bodies, sorry, you should have bought a wide body, myself included, if you want to change your wheels, because there are hardly anything that fit narrow bodies that doesn't look like total poo, in my opinion. However, if you need to know what tires and wheels will fit, obviously if you can get the wheels themselves and test fit them, that would be great. But otherwise, I use an online calculator. There are several of them. I tend to use one at a website called 1010 Tires. That's 1010tires.com. You can put in the factory wheel specs versus the proposed wheel specs, and it will tell you how much inner and outer clearance change there is. On these cars, base models and all of them in general, people say, I've got Z51 brakes. I do not. I have a base model 1LT with little brakes, which is fortunate for me in case I want to do drag radials. I can put 17s on there, no problem. If I ever want to do 15s, all I have to do is change the knuckles and probably grind my lower control arms. So the main thing is check the inside and outside clearance. You can take a straight edge, lay it up here, find out how much room you got coming out. Basically, get a tape measure, do some research. Don't ask us what the biggest, widest wheels are, or if a certain wheel you found will fit. Try it out, do some measurements. I also see people asking, will 305, 35, 19s fit on a base model on stock wheels? Here's your hint. Yes, yes they will. Will they work with a stock front tire size? Yes, yes they will. 245, 40, ZR18. My dirty wheels and brakes. The magic number for the C6 is there has to be a front to rear difference between 1 and 10%, with rear being larger. The sweet spot from the factory is 4%. So if you do your calculations on the tire size and keep it within that 1 to 10%, preferably more toward the middle, as you go toward closer to the 1 or closer to the 10, you can have a little bit of an issue with your traction control, stability control system, as the wheel speeds are already on the verge of showing slippage. It may delay or make the onset of traction control a little sooner, depending on where you're at there. If you do not know how to calculate tire size and tire height, your first number, 305, is how wide the tire is. The second number is 35. That is 35% of 305 is how tall the sidewall is. And then of course everybody knows that's the wheel size. So if you want to calculate how tall this tire is, you take 305 times 35%, that's 0.35. That will give you this height in millimeters. You have to double it because you have 2 sidewalls to account for, so you can also do it by 0.7. You can double that in your head. But 305 times 0.35, take that number times 2, and then if you're going to stay in inches, divide it by 25.4. That gives you your tire height, total tire height in inches. Add it to your wheel size, in this case 19, and as I remember, I think this wheel winds up being 26.8 inches tall, if I remember right. I don't know, it's been a while since I did it. And then you would do the same thing with your front, your 245, 40, 18. You take those tires, the heights, make sure they're within 10% of each other, and you should be golden. Always make sure the rear tire is taller. I have also run on this car a 305, 45, 17, and it works just fine as well. Also, for those that are asking about running a run flat tire versus a non-zero pressure tire, if you're wondering why your car won't hook, why it's skating all over the place, why it rides like not good, it's more than likely your run flat tire. Those have a reinforced sidewall so that there's no pressure in the tire, that the sidewall itself will keep you from tearing up the wheel. That keeps the tire from flexing, from absorbing bumps as easily. And also when you're talking about your run flats, if you're buying a C6 and it has factory run flats, you need to check the date. These particular tires, the date codes are on the back side, but there will be a little oval spot that has a date code to tell you the week and the year that the tire was manufactured. Anything I think over 5 years is really not recommended for high speed or performance application. And if they're anywhere near 10 years old, they're just flat out getting dangerous to drive, as the tire has deteriorated and is really not supposed to be used anymore. So look into that, find your date codes on your tires. If they're running run flats, just know that they're not gonna hook in a performance application, and they're probably not gonna ride that great. Granted, we bought sports cars, we didn't buy luxury sedans. These cars don't ride, fantastic anyway, but they can be a lot better with the right tire and wheel package. I have lots of people asking if the labor that they were quoted at a shop is adequate or exorbitant for what the work is being done, especially like cam installs. I think most shops anywhere from 12 to 15 hours of labor for a cam install. Let me put it in perspective for you. So first thing, you're gonna take the intake out. You're gonna drain the coolant. You're gonna have to disconnect the AC condenser, so you're gonna have to have your AC pump down. You're gonna disconnect the alternator, pull the belt. You're going to take your water pump. You're going to take the power steering rack completely out of the car. So you're going to disconnect both tie rods, take the rack completely out with the power steering pump and all the lines. If you got a Z51 car, it's going to have a power steering cooler attached to it. The thing is heavy, it is cumbersome, it is awkward, and if you're trying not to scratch up your pretty paint, you're probably going to want to have an extra set of hands available. Once you get all that out, of course, you're going to have to pull the valve covers, you're going to have to pull the rockers so you can get the push rods out. You're going to change your valve springs, so you're going to have a valve spring compressor and an installer. You're going to have to lock your flywheel or your flex plate to be able to break the crank bolt loose. The thing is torqued to, I think, 270 foot-pounds. It takes quite a bit to get the thing broken loose. And if you have a manual car, just holding the parking brake may not be strong enough to hold against the motor to get that broken loose. So you're going to have to pull the starter. Well, to pull the starter, if you have stock manifolds, you get to pull the manifold. So you're going to pull that manifold. Of course, most people doing a cam, they're going to do headers, so you're going to have the manifolds off anyway. So when you're talking about 12 to 15 hours, keep in mind that to pull the manifolds, you're probably going to start with taking the exhaust off. So you're going to start with your cam job, basically right there at those exhaust tips. You're going to disassemble exhaust all the way up, get the manifolds, disassemble the entire front end of your car, pull the radiator, pull the AC condenser, pull the whole front end of the motor apart, and then you can start swapping out the parts inside your engine. And then you get to put it all back together, make sure you don't have any bolts left, get your AC recharged, get your coolant refilled, burp the system, get all the air out of it. Obviously put the exhaust manifolds on, put the exhaust completely back on the car, and then you can start getting the car tuned. So yeah, 12 to 15 hours, yeah, that's right, I think. Anybody that says they can do a cam job in a C6 Corvette in 3-4 hours, I want to see it happen. Put it on video, prove me wrong. Now, I'm not trying to come off as being inflammatory or being a jerk. I know it probably sounds like I am, like I'm down on people that just don't know, but if you just do a little bit of searching, a lot of times you'll find the answer to your question has already been made. Now, you search 15, 20 minutes and you can't find it, okay, fair enough. I mean, some people just aren't good at that type of thing. I have no problem with helping somebody out. I just want them to do their due diligence and try a little bit for themselves first. So if anything, I hope maybe you got some answers to your questions. Maybe you learned something you didn't know. Obviously, I'd appreciate it if you'd like, comment. Hey, if you think I'm a jerk, sorry, not trying to be, just trying to help you out. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully I'll have some other good stuff for you soon. Thanks, y'all have a great night.